Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, May 5th, 2020, Cinco de Mayo, the very real holiday in at least parts of Mexico, but not Mexican Independence Day, as we've been led to believe by Mexican beer distributors here in the United States. I think they're behind it, generally speaking, but who knows? Let's blame it on them, because why not? It's Corona beer, and Corona has not got a good thing going for it at the moment. A little bit of bad PR. Anyway, speaking of that news, we'll pick up, of course, on 18 to 20 different stories. 19 would actually probably have been the correct number to pick. Stories surrounding, of course, the latest developments in the coronavirus outbreak across the world, including news from a maybe credible, maybe not credible source. We'll see whether they link to what they're going with here. Yes. Okay. I have a source, but I was surprised to find that the source at the end of this chain was The Hill. So we'll see where they led things to. But what would we call it? An account identifying itself as V2019N and calling itself COVID-19, tweeting out the news that French scientists have identified the earliest known case of COVID-19 in the nation. And I guess they mean the French nation, a patient who was treated in a hospital near Paris, that would be their capital, in December, an indication that the virus has been spreading across the world for far longer than previously known, which, I don't know, may or may not be true. I'll follow the trail where it leads, but it has been interesting. Of course, there were people who were claiming that perhaps they had suffered from something that they now think was COVID-19-like in its symptoms as early as, originally I think people were complaining of it possibly having affected them in November in California and elsewhere on the West Coast. But those suspicions were more recently dismissed by people doing a genetic survey of sorts of the path of the virus and finding that whatever illness it was that they were suffering with in November either couldn't have been the coronavirus or related to it because the genetic evidence pointed elsewhere, or that I don't know whether they actually had access to whatever pathogen it was that was causing their illness back in November. But basically the idea was that they thought that the genetic understanding of the structure of the virus made it unlikely, if not impossible, that this thing in November in California was actually it. No word how much investigation there's been, genetically speaking, of what happened to this person in December in Paris, but it's entirely possible. I guess we'll follow that line and see where it leads, but that's only because Daily Co's Radio is live now. We couldn't do this if it weren't, unless it was a podcast, which it is, which, all right, well, it's not a time travel problem. It's just that we do this in two different formats. By the way, I guess we should ask this question. Every once in a while we threaten to try and adopt a new format. The newer versions of the software that we use to drive the show, I notice, are offering now, and I guess they've been offering for some time, and I've just been ignoring it because once I find something that works, I really am loath to change it. But I guess some of the features of our broadcast software allow for live streaming via the popular video services. In other words, you can pipe this thing out to YouTube Live or Facebook Live or some other thing live that I don't know about, but that more people are using, or the kids know and I don't. And been considering that. And on my online shopping sprees, while we've been stuck inside for the pandemic, have included possibly buying one of those green screens that may or may not be simply used to present a more attractive background, plus block out all the people who are eating breakfast in the background behind me during most days. And I could put some sort of news type set up, and we would all look like we were official and everything. And then you would all get to see whether or not I get a haircut, and whether the places, whether the barber shops, etc., have reopened here or not. You would be able to measure those. I'd probably also have to buy more razors and things like that. And we'd all have a great time pretending we were a real news show. Perhaps we might try that. Well, all right, let's see. Rolling Forward Daily Kos news, radio and news and television and everything else that we could be doing is live now. Kagro X, me, David Waldman, welcomes you to President Trump's favorite holiday, Taco Bowl Abuse Awareness Day. That's right. I'd forgotten that one. Thanks, Bill, for reminding me. They remember, of course, during the campaign in 2016, I think Trump famously declared his love for Mexico, against which he was campaigning, of course, by having one of the fabulous taco salad bowls from the Trump Tower luncheonette, whatever it is that they keep down on the first floor there, and snapped a picture of himself at his notoriously sloppy desk as some sort of tribute to Mexico for whatever reason. Also pointed out by our good Twitter friend Wolfram on the Twitter machines today, the fantastic astral coincidence of Taco Tuesday and Cinco de Mayo. And so I don't see how you can avoid essentially, I don't know, insulting everybody in Mexico. Maybe not. Maybe they love it when we eat tacos. Maybe they don't think we deserve them. I'm not really sure. But we all deserve to have a little bit of, well, we can flirt with the idea of having fun with that confluence and doing something special for the day. In the meantime, though, let's check in with what the hell's going on with this coronavirus in Paris in December story. I keep hearing more and more stories about this stuff. As a matter of fact, one of my brothers has reported, and I think when we first talked about this thing hitting out in the mountain west to west coast early on, he and his wife both had a bout of some sort of terrible flu. I think in January was when it hit them. And they, afterwards, once we were into pandemic times, became convinced, not unreasonably, that they had suffered similar symptoms, including the loss of taste and smell, which is sort of a telltale thing, or has been. Anyway, even though not everyone who's got coronavirus now, confirmed coronavirus, COVID-19 coronavirus has reported that experience, but that one's been kind of unique to this. I'm sure there are other things that can cause it, but apparently there was some antibody testing being conducted of some kind, but I think the antibody testing is still a little questionable and shaky these days, but that would seem to indicate that he had some COVID-19 antibodies, which, if the test holds up, would make things very interesting. I mean, I guess all that the study that we saw disproved was that it wasn't circulating as early as November in California. Was it in Colorado in January? I don't know. I don't know if we've answered that question. They think it was in Paris in December, and as you know from our illustrious president, nobody goes to Paris anymore. So what's the story here? Well, let's see. There's doctors here. We're going to pronounce some French things. From the Groupe Hospitalier, right? The hospitaler group, Paris Seine. In Saint-Denis. My goodness, I got a lot of French to have to cover here. And they said a sample taken from a 42-year-old, they actually say fishmonger here, which is really something we haven't seen used in quite a while. 420-year-old fishmonger, probably, if he's using the word fishmonger, admitted to the ER on December 27th, tested positive for coronavirus, so that's, I guess, confirmed. The man reported coughing up blood, less often reported, but consistent, I guess. A headache and fever, admitted to the ICU, recovered and discharged. good recovery there to come in coughing up blood. The French victim had not traveled abroad since August of 2019 when he visited his native Algeria. One of his children had symptoms of an influenza-like illness, the old ILI, before he fell ill. It sounds like if he had symptoms of an ILI, he had already fallen ill, but I get your point. A potential sign that the child had contracted the coronavirus as well. And it leads, interestingly enough, to The Hill, which is not where I thought we were going here. French scientists discover nation-treated coronavirus patient in December. Reed Wilson put this one together, and it was posted last evening. Let's see, can we, they too use the fishmonger construction. That's interesting. Any more to this story? The discovery dramatically alters the timeline of the coronavirus, which has been responsible for more than 3.5 million confirmed COVID-19 cases around the world, including 169,000 in France, as well as more than 250,000 deaths. The man's admission to the hospital came 4 days before the first reports of a cluster of unusual pneumonia cases in Wuhan, China, the epicenter of the outbreak. That's going to do some damage to the Chinese lab did it thing. Unless, of course, well, you never know. With these guys, they can make up anything. The Chinese smuggled it into Paris. Okay. The earlier date means it is likely the coronavirus has been spreading around the globe for weeks or months before it was identified by Chinese scientists in the cluster of abnormal pneumonia cases in Wuhan. The French victim had not traveled abroad, as we found out, since August of 2019 when he was in Algeria, which, by the way, how is Algeria doing with this virus? We should check in with the worldometers. Today should be the day we topped the 70,000. We didn't quite make it yesterday. I think the day ended with us sitting at 69,925 or so. That's where we are now. It's +4 for the day. I think we got that +4 overnight. So we're minutes. As soon as they start reporting, we're minutes away from topping the 70,000. We will also top 1.25 million cases here in the United States. The first other nation to top 250,000 now officially is Spain. I see they're posting 250,561. So just over the top. And look, their death rate is holding at nearly, almost exactly, just a little higher, I guess, than 10%. That would be the apparent death rate because it's only based on numbers of cases identified and deaths reported. I'm sure there's more cases out there than they know, but they happen to both be sitting at 250,000 something cases and 25,000 total deaths. So that's pretty remarkable all by itself. So yeah, let's see. Algeria, how are they doing there? They are listed as having 4,648 total cases with 465 deaths. Putting them at 106 total cases per million of population. Middle of the pack there, I would guess. 11 deaths per 1 million population. So sitting at the top of the pack, really, on that one. Pretty good rate, quite honestly. Okay, just thought we'd keep an eye on things. Back to the Hill's reporting of this. And they don't appear to be linking to anything else here. Oh, okay. Well, I guess there's a link up top to ScienceDirect.com. Let's take a look at that story and see what's going on here. Science Direct. What are we looking at here? I guess, are they reprinting journal entries? I guess that's what's happening here. So I guess where does it originally come from? I can't quite tell. Let's see. SARS-CoV-2 was already spreading in France in late December 2019 is the title of this, what they're calling short communication. From where, I'm not entirely sure. There is a link here that I don't recognize and will tell us nothing. Okay, so at any rate, let's see. The Hill continues on with their summary of that report. Algeria was the last time he had been out of the country, but it wasn't. It hadn't happened for some time. It was back in August of 2019. Both of these clues indicate that the man contracted the virus from someone else and that community spread of the virus was taking place long before it had been identified by scientists. There are ample signs that the coronavirus has been spreading far more widely than known. 2 recent studies have showed that about a fifth of all infected people show no symptoms at all. More than half of those who test positive for the virus cannot identify how they were infected, another sign of asymptomatic spread. The French doctors identified the first case by retesting samples taken from patients between early December and the middle of January, when the country confirmed its first case of the coronavirus. The doctors examined 124 samples taken from patients who had presented ILIs, 80 of whom tested negative for viruses like influenza or other more common coronaviruses. 14 patients were identified as potentially suffering from the coronavirus. 1 tested positive for the virus. The doctor said the man showed symptoms consistent with those of patients who tested positive later in China and Italy, thought to be the site of the first significant spread of the virus in Europe. COVID-19 is considered to be responsible for 86,334 cases and 12,210 deaths as of April 10th, 2020 in France. But our findings suggest that these numbers could be underestimating the actual burden of COVID-19, the doctors wrote. The United States has found its own earlier cases of the coronavirus than initially thought. The Santa Clara, California Medical Examiner's Office recently reclassified the death of a woman in early February as being due to the coronavirus, about 3 weeks before the first known death on American soil. All right. That was the story, I think, as we heard it, for the United States. That appears to be consistent with what we learned earlier on. Okay, so we'll take that under advisement and move on. Let's see. The day's hot stories that I've collected along the way. I happened to see this interesting note on Sean Hannity using his platform last night to, as it says here in Mediaite, slam the armed Michigan protesters. Interesting take here. I support the Second Amendment, but I do not. Oh, but you should not, is basically what's happening. I support the Second Amendment, but do not intimidate officials with a show of force. Surprisingly reasonable stance for him to be taking. I guess he sees the likelihood of catching some blame for some of this if he doesn't distance himself from these protesters. And I guess, I don't know, it's interesting that the neo-Nazi symbolism wasn't really what moved him to it, but the guns, of all things. So that would be the part you would think normally he would say he's okay with. But they should ditch the Nazi symbolism. But okay. Just interesting. Just, I guess, log it as part of our observation of the distancing people are trying to put between themselves, whether it's politicians, elected pols facing elections in November, trying to put distance between themselves and Trump, or television commentators trying to put distance between themselves and the Nazis who are showing up at the rallies. I don't think Laura Ingraham has managed that yet. Keep an eye on that one. Okay. Another interesting story. This one out of Kentucky. And let's see, I think I saw everyone's good friend Joe Sonka reporting or tweeting this one around. The reporting is from Andrew Wolfson of the Louisville Courier-Journal, same paper. Judge asks for investigation of McConnell's role. That's Mitch McConnell. We'll be talking about him, I'm sure, later in the show if we're successful in getting Joan McCarter to join us. Judge asks for investigation of McConnell's role in creating federal bench vacancy. You remember this story. Joan told us about it. Just days before the Senate Judiciary Committee is set to consider the nomination of Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's protege to a federal appeals court, the court's chief justice, is it the appeals court itself or where he sits now? The court's chief judge, requested an investigation of McConnell's role in creating the vacancy. Demand Justice, a progressive judicial watchdog group, requested a postponement of Wednesday's scheduled hearing before the Senate Judiciary on the nomination of Judge Justin Walker of Louisville to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. That is some promotion. So is he a local federal judge or a state judge? Going to bump him all the way up to the Court of Appeals for D.C. Circuit. The chief judge of that court issued a public order May 1st, asking the U.S. Chief Justice John Roberts to transfer to another circuit, demand justice's allegation that a judge on the court may have been persuaded to retire to allow another judge to take his seat. Okay, so I think Demand Justice is asking the D.C. Circuit to investigate whether one of its judges was persuaded to retire so that McConnell could put one of his young proteges in that seat. The order, I guess so are they saying the chief judge, I better just read the article, but I guess they're saying the chief judge of the D.C. Circuit asked Roberts to transfer the investigation out of their circuit, which would be kind of standard procedure, I guess. The order, a copy of which the Courier-Journal obtained Monday night, does not mention Walker by name. However, on Monday, the New York Times reported that the court's chief judge, Srinivasan, whose name I should be more familiar with because he's right here in the D.C. Circuit. That I do recognize the name. Judge Srinivasan has referred Demand Justice's request for an investigation to Roberts so it can be transferred to another circuit for review and disposition. Srinivasan was appointed by President Barack Obama. The Courier-Journal and the Times previously reported that McConnell privately lobbied judges to retire in time for Donald Trump to fill their seats this term. The Washington Post recently reported that the White House has been considering Walker for a seat on the appeals court since long before Judge Thomas Griffith, who occupies that seat, announced his retirement. He hasn't been around all that long, too. Wasn't he a George W. Bush, Karl Rove placement? Unless I have him confused with someone else. In a news release, Demand Justice said Justin Walker's nomination was already controversial, but this emerging investigation means an even darker cloud is hanging over his appointment. The hearing on Walker's nomination should not go forward until we know the truth about what ethical lines Mitch McConnell crossed to get Walker this seat. The group said that at least McConnell should come clean about whether and when he contacted Judge Thomas Griffith prior to his sudden retirement. McConnell and his spokesman, Robert Sturrer, I don't think I know that spokesperson, could not be immediately reached for comment Monday night, but they would have avoided it regardless, I'm sure. At McConnell's urging, President Donald Trump nominated Walker for the D.C. Circuit Court less than 6 months after he took his seat on the U.S. District Court in Louisville. The Courier-Journal reported the appointment of Walker, 38, to the coveted seat would likely ignite a fierce fight on Capitol Hill over the former University of Louisville law professor's qualifications to serve on the nation's second most influential bench. The ABA Standing Committee on Federal Judiciary last year rated Walker not qualified for the district court, saying that he had never tried a case, either criminal or civil, or as lead or co-counsel. But Walker was confirmed by the Senate 50-41. That's about as bad a job as you can do at it. And McConnell praised the pick, saying in a statement that Walker is an outstanding legal scholar who represents a new generation of federal judges. Walker was a law clerk to Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy and to now Justice Brett Kavanaugh when Kavanaugh was on the D.C. Circuit bench. Walker was a vocal advocate for Kavanaugh when he faced accusations of sexual harassment allegedly committed when he was a young man. Thank you for reminding us. Okay. So, not particularly qualified there. I mean, good clerkships, to be sure, but I mean, I know someone in my family with the same qualifications clerkship-wise, and, while I would say he'd be certainly 100% more qualified to be a federal. It's hard to think of your younger brother as qualified for the federal bench, but it's absolutely true. I mean, it's certainly no question that he's tried cases in front of, federal courts and appeals courts. I guess he hasn't tried cases. He's an appellate lawyer. I don't know. Maybe he has some trial experience that we didn't discuss earlier on. But he's been working in appellate law for quite some time. Anyway, make him a federal judge. He's a youngish guy. I guess he's too old for Republicans. You know how they are. They like the young kids, is all I'm saying. All right, other stories to round up. From today, let's see. Oh, that seems like a fun one. We should just make you aware of the existence of this relatively terrible person. Let's see. Who sent us this one? Where did this one come from? I know it's in here somewhere. But I have a feeling maybe Kate Sherrill may have highlighted this one, though not wasn't an Illinois legislator, but it turned out to be an Ohio guy. But just so you should be aware that there are such people out here. The report is from the Ohio Capitol Journal. I don't think I've ever landed on them before, but state representative who won't wear a mask here. Why? Because faces are the likeness of God. That is a really interesting take. Tyler Buchanan, I guess, unless he pronounces it Buchanan, as some people do, like we do here in Virginia for some reason, writing for the Ohio Capitol Journal about State Representative Nino Vitale of Urbana, Ohio. So it's an interesting take on things. I guess he's saying, I won't cover my face because I have the face of God. That is an extraordinary claim. Having already claimed that face masks do not work, State Representative Nino Vitale offered a new reason Monday why he wouldn't wear a mask during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, because faces are the likeness of God. Vitale, a Republican from Urbana, had been among the most outspoken critics against the health orders issued by Governor Mike DeWine and the Ohio Department of Health Director Dr. Amy Acton. He has called their COVID-19 response unconstitutional and in recent days has openly encouraged Ohioans to ignore their shutdown orders. That seems rather brazen. On Monday, Vitale took to Facebook to share more thoughts about wearing face masks, so I imagine he shared his worst thoughts and reserved them for Facebook. This is the greatest nation on earth, founded on Judeo-Christian principles. There's a better one, founded on something else, I guess. He wrote on his official page, one of those principles is that we are all created in the image and likeness of God. That image is seen most by our face. I will not wear a mask. We don't really know that that's the case. It could have been the arms and legs that were the real model, created by an octopus. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Networks Radio. Let's continue on with this very interesting theological argument against wearing face masks. I don't think I've run into this one before. Let's see, where do we leave off? Yes, okay, here we are. So on Monday, Vitale took to Facebook to tell everybody that you can't wear a mask because we are created in the image and likeness of God. That image is most seen by our face. We're not really certain of that. It could be any part of the body, really. Perhaps, like we said, maybe God a little bit more octopus-like, like the Cthulhu gods. I have no idea. Anyway, I guess we're supposed to, I would guess, I don't know. I've never really seen it said that, who knows? I don't study the same aspects, let's say, of the scriptures as this guy might, but I don't know if there's any real reason to believe that it's necessarily the face that is the central part of it. I mean, that's certainly a big part of how humans identify one another, but the whole body has got a shape all its own, and I don't know why we wouldn't think that was the case. So okay, whatever. I'm sure lots of people could care less. Anyway, or I really could not care less. I love saying it wrong, though. It's more fun in the wrong way. All right. Well, during the pandemic, Vitale has spent much of his time, downplaying the severity of the virus and sharing conspiracy theories. So this is just one of several reasons why, blah, 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 pay attention to me, and yada, yada. He's attended numerous protests at the Ohio State House, calling for DeWine to reopen the state. At one such protest, he alleged that Bill Gates may have created the coronavirus. There's an embedded tweet, I guess, in which he does such a thing. These are Tyler's tweets covering his nonsense, including, yes, here's the... At a recent COVID-19 protest, GOP state rep Nino Vitale accuses Bill Gates of having created the coronavirus. So he's got all the most authoritative sources on his side, obviously. More recently, he's had a COVID-19 video taken down by YouTube for spreading misinformation. So actual action taken against him. And speaking of action, he has criticized Dr. Action herself for issuing health orders despite being an, quote, unelected official. Well, so what? Doesn't really matter. DeWine empowered her to do it. DeWine has pushed back against that line of attack, saying he is an elected governor, appointed Action to serve on his cabinet, and that complaints should be directed at him instead of, like, her house. Vitale referred to Acton, who is Jewish, this is fantastic, as an unelected globalist health director. She is, of course, just the basic Ohio health director, but, you know, I guess if you're Ohioan, you think of Ohio as the globe. The word globalist, of course, broadly means someone who advocates for a policy of treating the whole world as a proper sphere for political influence, according to Merriam-Webster. And, of course, that doesn't actually tell the real story, because the whole world is a proper sphere for political influence. There's political influence all over this globe. But anyway, more specifically, the word has been widely used in recent years as an anti-Semitic slur, according to the Anti-Defamation League. What else can we uncover about this nut bar? James Pash, the regional director of the ADL's Cleveland office, provided this outlet a statement responding to Vitale's post. Pash had previously condemned a comparison made by State Senator Andrew Brenner, Republican of Powell, who wrote on Facebook last week that he would not let Acton turn Ohio into Nazi Germany. Brenner later apologized, apparently. And let's see. For the second time in a week, a member of the Ohio legislature has invoked anti-Semitism when describing displeasure with the state's COVID-19 response, Pash said. Let's see. Vitale's use of the anti-Semitic slur globalist when describing Ohio's director of health is unacceptable and offensive. The term globalist has roots in a long-running conspiracy theory about Jewish populations being disloyal to the countries in which they live while operating through secret international alliances. Pash described the anti-Semites frequently using the term globalist as a code word for Jew. Whether Vitale purposely invoked anti-Semitism or not, we strongly urge him to remove that term from his vocabulary and issue an apology to Dr. Action and the entire Jewish community. The Anti-Defamation League is willing and able to provide Vitale with, and all other elected officials, training on anti-Semitism if they can't figure it out for themselves. In an interview last week, Vitale told the Capital Journal he was unaware the word had such a negative context. Yeah, right. He claimed not to know Acton was Jewish. That could be. Despite her having mentioned it numerous times at the daily press conferences. That's interesting, too. But I'm sure he wasn't really listening to those. Her faith was spotlighted on the previous controversy in the previous controversy involving Brenner, which was widely reported in dozens of news outlets in Ohio and throughout the globe. So, really no excuse. Vitale claimed he was unaware of the Brenner story also, or that Republican officials from DeWine to the state Republican chair had publicly condemned him. He missed that. He doesn't read stories about himself either. Vitale and other members of the Ohio House of Representatives returned to work on Monday. The Ohio Capital Journal reported over the weekend that a piece of legislation involving the state's COVID-19 response is already being considered. Republican State Representative John Becker is planning to introduce a bill that would reopen all of Ohio immediately and would revoke the executive powers used by DeWine and Acton to shut down the state's economy. Vitale is not the only Republican member of the Ohio House of Representatives to have shared conspiracy theories about COVID-19. At an economic recovery task force meeting on Monday morning, Representative John Cross, a Republican, of course, of Kenton, claimed the virus was a deliberate attack on America by the Chinese. And I guess his live stream making such a claim is likewise embedded in Tyler's story here. So there you go. Good suggestion coming in from Scott, and I think the end of the story leads naturally to it. There is another story about other Ohio legislators looking to use their powers just as they did in Wisconsin and elsewhere. Republican legislators, in this case, unhappy with a Republican governor, but in the case of Wisconsin, unhappy with a Democratic governor, have been looking to strip powers that reside with the governor and other high-ranking officials in the state government when they use them in ways with which they are unhappy. And we have a similar situation in Ohio. This from another website I've never landed on before, but called newsbreak.com. I'm always wary about these things because you never know when you're going to hit a fake one. But this does appear to have been a widely discussed story. Ohio legislator looks to cut Health Director Dr. Amy Acton's power. And really, her power was cut the moment I realized that her name wasn't Dr. Action. And I still, I wish I had taken screenshots of the Hill's articles on those things. I would guess they've gone back and corrected them by now. But much less exciting as Acton. Well, here's the story. When Governor Mike DeWine wanted to change the date of the Ohio primary last month, he couldn't under the state's constitution. However, Dr. Amy Acton, the state's health director, could and did. By statute, she has the ability to make special or standing orders or rules for preventing the spread of contagious or infectious diseases. How do you like that? Well, apparently that upsets at least some members of the Ohio State Legislature, and they're looking to revoke that statutory authority, although where the rest of the story is on that, I cannot tell you. What a strange format for this news break site. Ohio, I mean, is there more to click on here? Because that's like a great summary for what's the article supposed to be about, but then there we are. Okay. The read full story is interestingly embedded in what looks like space that's blocked out for a pop-up ad, which is very weird, but probably a good way of getting people to accidentally click on pop-up ads. This story actually leads us to news5cleveland.com, an ABC affiliate by the looks of it, and that's at least now we have a little better sense of where the story is coming from. Ohio legislator looks to cut healthcare director Dr. Amy Acton's power. We read the opening paragraph, of course. State Representative John Becker, Republican, again, of Union, said that the statute goes too far, the one giving her this power. There's been an epic abuse of power. Wow, epic, Becker told News 5. As a result, he's introducing this week a bill titled NOW, N-O-W, Need Ohio Working. That is a really lame acronym. Need Ohio Working now. All right. That would make Dr. Acton's orders recommendations that the General Assembly would have to vote up or down. It's time to stop the madness, you know. Well, we're going to continue it with this. I think a lot of people thought this would run through the end of April, then the beginning of May, which it has. The concern, so what? The concern, of course, initially was overrunning the healthcare system, and that may have been an overblown concern to begin with. Regardless, we're clearly on the downside of the curve. They are not. So that's no longer a factor that's on the table. It is. So there's really no reason, there is, why we can't reopen the state of Ohio. So does that mean there's going to be potentially more infections and more deaths? Well, sure, but you know, we have deaths from swimming pools and bathtubs. Oh yes, baseball bats, ladders, guns, we know. And highway accidents too. So we can't protect everybody from everything, which is a thing I'd like you to keep in mind if, let's say, you reopen a state and there's a huge spike in deaths and people begin losing their family members again. And I don't know, maybe some of those ladders or swimming pools or baseball bats, say, result in the death of State Representative John Becker, Republican of Union, for instance. You know, I think it's a legal excuse. If the cops show up at your house to say you're under arrest for the murder of State Representative John Becker, you say, Well, sure, but we have deaths from swimming pools and bathtubs and highway accidents, so we can't protect everybody from everything. I think it's a line you might try out on a couple of other people who are advocating the same thing. They all say there's going to be deaths. True. Now, if one of them is yours, what can you really do about that? I mean, they're saying that about you. That's a threat to you. You might as well stand your ground and use whatever swimming pools you have lying around to protect yourself from the murderous predations of State Representative John Becker, Republican of Union, among others. DeWine asked Monday if he would veto the measure if it were to pass and cross his desk, said he has not had a chance to look at the bill. Ugh. Certainly, the legislature has every right to look at any law that exists today, but we have to deal with this problem, and this is a huge, huge problem, DeWine said. So I'll reserve any comment until I actually see the legislation. Becker said he had texted with House Speaker Larry Householder. I said, hey, the media wants to know, is the speaker supporting this bill? Because I didn't actually consult with him before writing it, Becker said. He said that the leadership has been drafting a bill all week, something of that nature, so it sounds like there is a leadership bill on the topic. What it looks like and when it's going to get introduced, I do not know. So my bill is the only one that's out there. Apparently, it's the first one out there, but it's not going to be the only one. And so that will help you create a list of people to invite into your swimming pool. So keep track of that, I guess, if you live in Ohio or nearby and have a swimming pool. You may have to take matters into your own hands, is all I'm saying, and is no different from what things are being said out there now by people who are having the police stand around and watch them do it and offering no reaction. Just kind of pointing that out. Okay, another big story from yesterday. The New York Times looking into this one. Very interesting, very telling, very Trumpian. Most events in the Lincoln Memorial, like we had the other day, are banned. Did you know that? And Trump got an exception. How did he get that? Citing the extraordinary crisis of the coronavirus, the Interior Secretary relaxed the rules so the president could hold a Fox News interview in one of the nation's most hallowed spaces. This is one of our lesser issues with the president and his administration, to be sure. But it is interesting. It's revealing. It shows you a lot about the way they operate. And it's probably one of their lesser crimes. But we're going to describe it nonetheless. Katie Rogers reporting this one for the New York Times. As President Trump's aides ran down the list of possible backdrops for his latest Fox News event, they eventually landed on their favorite, the Lincoln Memorial, an iconic tribute to an American life and one of Mr. Trump's preferred places to add a primetime touch of drama to his presidency. There was just one catch. While Mr. Trump and many other presidents and others have hosted inauguration concerts and gatherings on the memorial's steps, any event meant to draw an audience inside the interior, near Daniel Chester French's sculpture of a seated Lincoln, is prohibited. The area beginning with the marble staircase where the columns start constitutes a boundary protected by federal law. But LOL, nothing matters when it comes to federal law and this president. So, on Sunday, when the president sat down with two Fox News anchors at Lincoln's marbled feet during a coronavirus-focused, not really, virtual town hall, it was because a directive issued by David Bernhardt, the Secretary of the Interior, had allowed them to do so. Various debates about how effective it was. The White House, of course, says it was a home run. I don't know what the usual television shot looked like, but the photo accompanying the piece is the one we discussed yesterday, that makes Trump look like minuscule in all of this, and really not, I would think, not the visual you want at all, but whatever. They think they had a home run with it, but they think they hit a home run every time they get up to bat. In fact, they don't even have to leave the on-deck circle. They should be credited with a home run right off the bat. No pun intended. So, let's see. How did this happen? Mr. Bernhardt, a former oil lobbyist whose Senate nomination was contested by Democrats who pointed to multiple accusations of conflict of interest and ethics violations, ordered the memorial temporarily closed for the event, which, okay, whatever. But this is interesting. Citing the coronavirus. This is a real stretch. I mean, like I said, don't waste any time trying to get to the bottom of it and prosecute anybody for it, but check out this. This is why I say this is so Trumpian. So here's what the order says. Given the extraordinary crisis that the American people have endured, okay, so far, so good, and the need for the president to exercise a core governmental function, all right, well, we do need the president to exercise core government. Well, not this president necessarily, but ordinarily a president might need to execute a core governmental function. But you're talking about, yeah. All right, well, what is this core governmental function? Well, to address the nation about the ongoing public health crisis. So how do you like this for the opening? So given the extraordinary crisis and the need for the president to exercise a core governmental function to address the nation about an ongoing public health crisis, I am exercising my authority to facilitate the opportunity for the president to conduct this address, which it isn't, it's a town hall, within the Lincoln Memorial. That's all it takes. The directive surprised officials at the National Park Service, who are used to scrambling to fill requests from this idiot's White House, including making sure Army tanks can safely be parked on the National Mall, as they had to do last summer for an Independence Day celebration that the president presided over using the Lincoln Memorial as a backdrop. Mr. Bernhardt's action enraged critics who complained that Mr. Trump had essentially conducted a partisan open mic night, but it pleased Mr. Trump and his aides, who had succeeded in creating the element of presidential sweep that he had been craving after weeks of negative press coverage and Twitter outbursts. Two people familiar with the town hall planning, who were not authorized to speak about it, said that last Tuesday the White House had initially agreed to host the event on the steps of the memorial, where they usually have such things. By Wednesday, the White House had an update. The interview would take place inside. When asked to comment on the specifics of the decision to host the event at the memorial, a White House official called it a joint decision with Fox News, though three people involved in the planning said the decision had been made by the White House. And here it gets even Trumpier. A Fox News spokeswoman pointed to remarks during the telecast when Brett Baer, the anchor who took turns asking questions with Martha McCallum, his fellow moderator, and presenting videos of Fox viewers asking theirs, mentioned that the choice of venue had been Mr. Trump's and that it had stirred controversy. Okay, all so far how you would guess it to be, right? Now, if you had to guess further, well, what will Trump say about it? You would probably guess correctly by guessing the most outrageous possible response. So what is Trump saying that they're pointing to? And here's the quote. And I did say this would be nice, but I thought it was your choice, not ours. That Mr. Trump responded to this idea. And I had not heard, what can you criticize? I don't think it's ever been done what we're doing tonight here. And I think it's great for the American people to see. This is a great work of art. Aside from the fact that that was a great man, this is a great work of art. I think we've all seen it. You know, we all pretty much know exactly where that is. Everyone can identify it. Thanks very much. But thanks for letting us see it. He just wanted to expose us to art, you see. But what an interesting thing. So, well, who decided to have it inside? We ask of the White House. The White House says, I think it was a joint decision between the White House and Fox. Fox says, yeah, it was the White House. So they ask him, whose idea was it to do this, Mr. President? I think it was yours, didn't you? Wasn't it you? Wasn't you, huh? It's a big mystery. We can't figure it out. And though one of the nation's most hallowed spaces had been opened up to him, Mr. Trump did little to keep the politics surrounding his response to the coronavirus out of the interview. You know, he wasn't able to do that, which was watched by about 4 million viewers. He predicted that the death toll, now for the substance of the discussion, interestingly enough, he predicted the death toll of the coronavirus pandemic ravaging the country may reach now as high as 100,000 in the United States. Meanwhile, the White House, their latest written studies peg it at well over 100,000. We may, in fact, surpass the 200,000 as well. This is twice as many as he had forecast just 2 weeks ago. He really doesn't understand the length of these windows. Even as he has been pressing states to reopen the economy. Nor was he questioned by the moderators about some familiar claims he has made in connection to the virus. The president again said his Democratic rival Joe Biden had written him a letter of apology after criticizing the president's decision to close the country's borders to travelers from China. Never happened, said T.J. Ducklow, spokesman for Biden. in claiming he had been uniquely prescient in closing the border to Chinese visitors in late January. He also said that Dr. Anthony Fauci, one of his administration's lead advisors on the crisis, had publicly downplayed the threat as late as a month later. So it wasn't me downplaying, it was Fauci, you see, which is, of course, the opposite of true. While Fauci had advised against Americans changing their daily activities at the time, he also warned that the virus could become a major outbreak. Mr. Trump also mischaracterized what he had actually done to keep travelers from entering the United States from China, claiming that he had closed down the country to China, when really the borders were closed only to Chinese travelers, not to everyone traveling from China, which is, the virus doesn't care about your nationality. It will climb on board anybody's body. And if they're coming from China and you think you can prevent the virus from spreading in the United States by banning travel from China, then ban travel from China. He didn't. At one point, Mr. Trump compared his treatment as president to Lincoln's. We heard about this one yesterday. Look, I'm greeted with a hostile press, the likes of which no president has ever seen, Trump said. The closest would be that gentleman right up there. They always said, Lincoln. Nobody got treated worse than Lincoln. I believe I am treated worse. He contradicts himself one sentence after another. It's amazing. The president's performance incensed Democratic lawmakers. I don't know it's Tom Udall gets himself quoted saying Trump's a dick. All right. Blah, blah, blah. Trump chose to sit inside the Lincoln Memorial, a solemn and hallowed place in our national heritage, to berate the press, play the victim, and spread falsehoods during a global emergency. That's true. Bad stuff. The National Mall belongs to the American people, and continuing to give the president free rein to use it for political grandstanding is a terrible mistake. Judd Deere, the White House spokesman, said it was awesome. Instead, in contrast, let's see. The weekend of his inauguration, Trump used the Lincoln Memorial as a backdrop to bask in what he thought was the singular nature of his inauguration concert. I don't know if this has ever been done before, he remarked, though it had. Then, last July, there was the Salute to America celebration, complete with tanks and a flyover by military jets. In 2 months, Mr. Trump is expecting to reprise that event. I didn't realize he was going to do it again. A day after traveling to Mount Rushmore to see the fireworks. He has promised that attendees will be spread 6 feet apart. Can't promise that, and they won't be. We'll have to do that in a very interesting way. Maybe we'll do it even greater. The little extra distance, Mr. Trump told reporters last month. That's hilarious. So he's going to one-up it. I've heard about that we have to have 6 feet in between people. I'm going to go one better. Ready? 7 feet. So this is now the 7-minute abs story in reverse. Fantastic. He's such a super brain genius. I can't wait for him to drop dead. Quite honestly, the world will be a hell of a lot better off without him. And I don't know if we're ever going to recover from this coronavirus while he lives. Sorry. Just thought I might point that out to everybody. Okay. Let's see. There are a couple of other things we got to catch up on, and let's see, what can we fit in before our next break? A couple of other interesting things. Yes, why not run down what Walter Schaub has been chronicling in this string of tweets. We've noted some, if not all, of these happenings individually, but well worth pointing out, especially if we get a chance to talk to Joan about some of these things later on. He tweeted yesterday, which I guess he means Sunday, Trump fired the intelligence community inspector general who complied with a statutory duty to notify Congress of a whistleblower complaint because Republican senators, like Chuck Grassley, let him. Although I thought, is this another one that's gone, or did he finally make it formal that he was firing him on Sunday? But I thought we'd heard the story, certainly. But it goes along with several others. On Friday, Trump announced a replacement for the HHS acting inspector general. We haven't used our sound effect today. The acting inspector general at HHS, who issued a report on severe supply shortages in hospitals during a deadly global pandemic, this one, because Republican senators like Ron Johnson let him. And I do have a separate standing story on the HHS Inspector General as well, somewhere stored away, perhaps after the break. Last month, Trump replaced the DOD, once again, inspector general who investigated whether he personally interfered in a $10 billion procurement to retaliate against Amazon's Jeff Bezos for news coverage in the Washington Post because Republican senators like James Lankford let him do it. Last month, Trump nominated a White House lawyer who helped him stonewall the legislative branch during the impeachment process to be the inspector general overseeing the coronavirus bailout because he knows Republican senators like Susan Collins are fine with that. One of Trump's nominees for an IG position is a staff-level government lawyer who would need the management skills to oversee a 1,600-person office overseeing the lead agency in the COVID-19 response because Republican senators like Marco Rubio have signaled that anything goes. Trump fired an FBI director for allowing the FBI to investigate him because Republican senators like Lindsey Graham let him. Trump committed the impeachable act of firing an attorney general for declining to stop an investigation of him because Republican senators like Tom Cotton let him. He then replaced the AG with an unprincipled loyalist because every Republican senator and 3 Democrats let him. Trump fired a director of national intelligence that he had personally appointed after the DNI's deputy spilled the beans to Congress that the Russians are trying to help him win another election because Republican senators like Mitch McConnell let him. The Trump administration reassigned and functionally demoted the head of an agency with a key role in finding a COVID-19 vaccine because he wouldn't push a dangerous anti-malaria drug on us. Trump, of course, claims he didn't know about it, but he has a bridge to sell you and won't undo it. And, of course, all the senators allow him to do that as well. Trump fired one witness who testified against him in the impeachment hearing and reassigned another because Republican senators like Rand Paul showed him how comfortable they are with the government retaliating against those who speak truth to power. It's an interesting little compilation there, just a good reminder of how long this has been going on, and I'm sure we'll see more of it, and we'll discuss more about it after this break. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Before we dive into, I guess we can visit the story, or at least part of the story from the New York Times about one of the latest Inspector General removals. We should probably point out another loose end of some of the earlier threads that I would tie to one, the loons in Ohio saying such crazy things as you shouldn't wear a mask because we're created in the image of God and to cover up your face would be an offense to God. It seems like an interesting take on things. But as long as we're talking about religious takes between that and the attacks on Amy Acton, our Dr. Action, and them possibly being anti-Semitic, I thought this was an interesting thing highlighted by our own David Neer over at Daily Kos, who tweeted this link out last night along with the note that this is one of the best things I've ever seen, and he's seen a lot of things. And it's neither glib nor concocted, as the link explains. The concept of pikuach nefesh, saving a life, is so important to Judaism that it overrides almost every other commandment. How do you like that? And it is linked to a tweet here from Rory Picker Nice, Neiss. I hope I've got the pronunciation right. Identified in the Twitter bio as a spiritual leader, Jewish educator, interfaith activist, Orthodox feminist, and executive director of JCRC St. Louis, STL is the STL, so the Jewish Community Center, essentially, in St. Louis. And let's see. This is an interesting take on things. Missouri, she writes, does not have no excuse absentee voting. Okay, so now in the times of coronavirus, when people are worried about standing in line like they had to do in Wisconsin, right, worried about going out to vote in person, this is an issue. Now, Missouri does not have no excuse absentee voting, and the governor of Missouri has already said that COVID-19 is not a valid excuse, which seems absurd, ridiculous, murderous even. But A religious belief is a valid excuse because, of course, we're talking about a conservative type Republican here. COVID-19, which is a hoax and is not real and is totally made up, is not an excuse for absentee voting. Whereas religious beliefs, which obviously are not hoaxes or totally made up out of thin air or represent people's wishes rather than scientific, provable pronouncements. You know how it is with religion. We all love religion. Okay, but that is a valid excuse. So if your religion, for whatever reason, prohibited you from making it out to the polls or made it very difficult to get to the polls, I could see that. I mean, I don't mind that as a valid excuse if it's a religious holiday and you've got to be elsewhere for religious reasons and you want to vote absentee. I think that's fine. The real, live, actual virus that's killing people, well, that's the one we really need to catch up on. But there you have it. Missouri doesn't have no excuse absentee voting. The virus, this idiot governor, it's Governor Parson. It's referred to by the Twitter handle here, and I don't know offhand the governor of Missouri. Mike Parson is the person occupying the at GovParsonMO Twitter handle. He says coronavirus not a valid excuse, but religious belief is. So Missouri Jewish clergy declare that it is our deeply held religious belief to stay home to save lives, and attaches a dispatch from the Jewish Community Relations Council, the JCRC, of St. Louis, and their statement on absentee voting. Shall we take a look? Here's the co-signed letter here. Dear members of the Jewish community of Missouri, our Jewish tradition values human life above virtually all else. That's nice. I think Republicans can get with that too, right? This is one of those times when we're going to find out that Judeo-Christian values are really Christian values, and then they're not actually Christian values either. They're just the way we want things to be. But to the extent that you take the Judeo part seriously, we are taught in the earliest chapters of the Torah, our core biblical text, we have to remind people what that is, that God created mankind in the image of the divine. Now, that's what Nino Vitale was saying, but it doesn't say anything about not wearing masks, I don't think. Our rabbis teach us that to save one life is to save an entire world, and to destroy one life is to destroy an entire world. You'll love that because, abortion, right? Indeed, every person has the potential to create a universe, and the loss of any person is immeasurable. The commandment to protect life extends beyond one's own life to an obligation to protect the lives of others. The Torah instructs, neither shall you stand by the blood of your neighbor. Okay? That being Leviticus chapter 19, verse 16. When the life of any person is in danger, almost all other religious laws become inapplicable. It is for these very reasons, at this time of pandemic, our community has recognized the need to forego all of our in-person religious rituals in the hopes of protecting the lives of those around us. Prayer services have been suspended or moved into the virtual sphere. The intricate process of preparing bodies for burial has been severely diminished. And even the holiday of Passover, one of our most central community festivals, was relegated exclusively to the home. As the pandemic continues, our Jewish teachings, laws, and traditions require us to stay home, except in situations where leaving the house is essential to preserving life. Wherever else possible, one must do everything in one's power to do whatever else is needed from the safety and security of one's own home. We, the undersigned Jewish religious leaders of Missouri, believe, therefore, that it is a deeply held religious belief to remain home on days in which elections are held, and that such a belief qualifies one under the Missouri law to vote in any regional, state, or federal elections via absentee ballot. It's pretty well constructed and signed by a number of rabbis and other religious leaders in Missouri, and I'm sure will be roundly rejected because Judeo-Christian values are so wonderful, etc., and something, but we only meant Christian, and we didn't even really mean that upon closer inspection. All right, Let's turn back around and go back to the story of Trump's serial replacement of inspectors general. I guess the latest outrage that we paid a great deal of attention to was the removal of one more of the acting officials. They're the acting inspector general overseeing the coronavirus response and the several $1 billion that went out the door that way. You want to actually check out what happened there? You're fired. Well, we got a new one, also related to coronavirus, because it makes Trump look bad, which is kind of, unfortunately what inspectors general sometimes turn up. You're supposed to be looking critically at the actions of the administration, and sometimes you come up with something critical of the administration, but that can't happen in this one. The New York Times' Peter Baker reported this one on May 1st, last Friday. We didn't get to discuss the full story. Trump moves to replace watchdog who identified critical medical shortages. The president announced the nomination of an inspector general for the Department of Health and Human Services who, if confirmed, would replace an acting official whose report embarrassed Mr. Trump. That's the long and short of it. We'll give you a little bit more information here, probably without reading through the entirety of the article, so we can hit some other things here. President Trump moved on Friday night, the best time to do these sorts of things, to replace a top official at the Department of Health and Human Services who angered him with a report last month highlighting supply shortages and testing delays at hospitals during the coronavirus pandemic. Now, why that bothers Trump, we don't know. As we know, it's all Obama's fault. The reason the cupboards were bare and we had broken tests, which, they try as they might, they can't nail them down on what the hell that's supposed to mean. But all of that was Obama's fault, et cetera, et cetera. I think I saw, was it Jonathan Karl trying to nail him down, perhaps just before the weekend. They thought they did a pretty good job with it, but, there's just no dealing with the guy. They said, what do you mean broken test? How could it be a broken test? There was no test at all, broken or otherwise, for the coronavirus that we're talking about, because it wasn't discovered until 2019. You were already president. There's no possibility that the Obama administration created tests, broken or otherwise, for SARS-CoV-2 virus. So what are you talking about? The real answer, of course, is I'm lying, but he can't say that. So, they thought they had him nailed. It's cornered. There's no way out of it. To which Trump just says, they were broken. Well, what do you mean by broken? Next question. So it's never going to work. So, I appreciate you trying. Just, you should be clear that it's never going to work. And you should report that we're never going to get real answers from this president because he's a liar and he's afraid of telling the truth about these things. It's, you could just say that, but no, we're still not at that stage. But we tried hard. Anyway, the White House waited until after business hours to announce the nomination of a new inspector general for the department who, if confirmed, would take over for Christy A. Grimm, who is white and blonde and everything. I can't believe he's firing her. Christy A. Grimm, the principal deputy inspector general who was publicly assailed by the president at a news briefing 3 weeks ago. I missed the call out of her name because I don't, watch these things that closely. The nomination was the latest effort by Mr. Trump against watchdog offices around his administration that have defied him. In recent weeks, he fired an inspector general involved in the inquiry that led to the president's impeachment, nominated a White House aide to another key inspector general post after overseeing virus relief spending, and moved to block still another inspector general from taking over as chairman of a pandemic spending oversight panel. We read all about that from Walter Schaub. Trump has sought to assert more authority over his administration and clear out officials deemed insufficiently loyal in the 3 months since his Senate impeachment trial on charges of abuse of power and obstruction of Congress, and that ended, of course, in acquittal, largely along party lines, minus 1/2 of a vote from Mitt Romney. While inspectors general are appointed by the president, they are meant to be semi-autonomous watchdogs ferreting out wastes, fraud, and corruption in executive agencies. The purge has continued unabated, even during the coronavirus pandemic that has claimed about 65,000 lives in the United States. Ms. Grimm's case, in effect, merged the conflict over Mr. Trump's response to the outbreak with his determination to sweep out those he perceives to be speaking out against him. Her report, released last month and based on extensive interviews with hospitals around the country, identified critical shortages of supplies, revealing that hundreds of medical centers were struggling to obtain test kits, protective gear for staff members, and ventilators. Trump was embarrassed by the report at the time that he was already under fire for playing down the threat of the virus and not acting quickly enough to ramp up testing and provide equipment to doctors and nurses. It's just wrong, the president said when asked about the report on April 6th. Did I hear the word Inspector General? Really? It's wrong. It's amazing that he just admits right off the top, if an Inspector General did it, it's wrong. Did I hear the word Inspector General? Really? It's wrong. And they'll talk to you about it. They won't, because I'll fire them. It's wrong. He then sought to find out who wrote the report. Where did he come from? The Inspector General. It was not he. What's his name? No, what's his name? What's his name? I'm not sure what he was trying to do there. I guess he was trying to get that out of a reporter. Yes, when the reporter did not know, Mr. Trump insisted, well, find me his name, as though that were going to change his answer. The president said, let me know. He expressed no interest in the report's findings, except to categorically reject them sight unseen. After learning that Ms. Grimm had worked during President Barack Obama's administration, Mr. Trump asserted that the report was politically biased. In fact, Ms. Grimm is not a political appointee, but a career official who began working in the Inspector General office later in Bill Clinton's administration and served under President George W. Bush, as well as Mr. Obama. But of course, Trump says Bush, he hates him too. She took over the office in an acting capacity when the previous Inspector General stepped down, probably because he couldn't take it anymore, because Trump is such an idiot. Let's see. He attacked her on Twitter. Why didn't the IG, who spent 8 years with the Obama administration, parentheses, did she, capital R, report on the failed H1N1 swine flu debacle where 17,000 people died? No, because 12,000 people died in that one, and it wasn't a failure. Want to talk to the admirals, generals, VP, and others in charge before doing her report, he wrote, mischaracterizing the government's generally praised response to the 2009 epidemic that actually killed about 12,000 in the United States. Another fake dossier. To take over as Inspector General, Mr. Trump on Friday night named Jason C. Weida, I guess, W-E-I-D-A, an assistant United States attorney in Boston. The White House said in its announcement that he had, quote, overseen numerous complex investigations in healthcare and other sectors. He's got to be confirmed by the Senate, of course, before assuming the position. Grimm declined to comment, but her office issued a statement recommitting itself to its mission of accountability. You probably don't need to know much more about that. Let's see. Among other nominations announced on Friday night was the president's new choice for ambassador to Ukraine, filling the position last occupied by Marie Yovanovitch. You know her story. And I guess, let's see, that about wraps it up. Who did he select? Lieutenant General Keith W. Dayton, a retired 40-year Army officer now serving as the director of the George C. Marshall European Center for Security Studies in Germany. Mr. Dayton speaks Russian and has served as defense attaché in Moscow. More recently, he served as a senior United States defense advisor in Ukraine, appointed by Jim Mattis, Trump's first defense secretary. I have a feeling that Mr. Dayton will probably disappoint the president by doing a good job. But who knows? Maybe he's some kind of crazy loyalist and we don't know anything about it. All right, a note from Joan that says she's getting ready to check in here. And right on cue, the bells chime and we're able to say, good morning, Joan. Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing also pretty well, I guess. Let's say.
It's very much relative.
Yes, really. Quite honestly, we're happy for whatever we can get here. But okay, not as busy this week for you. That's good news. At least with other people's duties. I know everybody needed
other
needed
people's
a break.
duties, other people's health issues, none of which are coronavirus, luckily.
All right.
But trying to fit in, we're very stressed out.
I can,
as is everybody.
Sure. I can believe it.
So trying to find time to take care of yourself and to just step away from all of this for a day if possible has been a thing we're trying to make happen.
That's good. And should do that on a rotating basis. Everyone needs an extra day off to wipe all their surfaces down.
So actually, we should probably, so that people aren't worried, because this is a worrying kind of thing.
Yeah.
Mark Sumner, Devil's Tower, is going to be on vacation for the next 2 weeks. So when you don't see him, well, you probably will see him on the front page at some point, because he has a really hard time staying away.
But, yes, that's therapy for him.
But don't panic when you don't see him.
Yes.
He's fine. He's healthy. He's just taking much, much needed time away.
Okay. Well, that's good. All right. So we have that to keep in mind. It won't panic anybody. A lot can happen into everything. And this disease happens in 2-week windows. So
yes,
you never know.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, I saw him tweeting a lot yesterday. I don't think that he can really leave this.
No, I wouldn't be.
But he can leave the deadlines, and he can leave the...
Yeah, that's how I would take a break myself. I would find it
responsible for telling all of us what's going on.
Yeah. Well, he enjoys doing that. I would feel it was stressful. It would be very difficult not to observe what was happening and comment on it. I find that much more soothing than trying artificially to separate myself from it.
Yes.
So, okay.
And really, when you know in 2 weeks you're going to have to come back and talk about it again.
Oh, yeah. Right. That's
you can't leave it. You have to at least keep an eye on what's happening so you're moving forward with it, so you don't come back completely at sea.
Yeah, you would miss a whole chapter of the history books in 2 weeks. The president could change his mind about any number of things. We'll lose an additional, possibly, 40,000 people along the way.
Let's make it 70,000. Let's make it 80. 85.
Yeah, right. Why not?
Anybody going to give me 100?
It really is pretty amazing. I guess maybe that's it. Maybe he's just used to operating in an auction bidding kind of thing. But I've not been able to understand how President Great Deals has not figured out that he needs to give himself a longer time horizon. He keeps kicking the can forward on his death toll projections, but doing it in things that are guaranteed to get him in trouble in under 5 days. I can't figure out why not just say either we don't know how many it's going to be, or throw out some wildly huge number and say, that likely we won't get to, at least for a while. But he keeps adding 5,000 or 10,000 to his estimates, which is a week worth of, well, all right. He's not very smart. And I guess the competing instinct is I don't want to panic people with larger numbers, but I don't know. He's very dumb. So anyway, are you on mute now? Have you not come back from your mute by any chance? Well, Joan, we're unable to hear you for some reason. The connection still looks stable. Maybe you can send us a note either through text or via Twitter and tell us what's going on. That would be a real shame if we were to lose your signal and all this. But just after telling everybody not to panic, too. All right. That's quite odd. Let's see if is there any note here? All right, I'll take a look at the text side of things. Okay. There's a problem coming back there. Okay. That's all. All right. So you muted, but the microphone dropped and hit the floor, dropped, or dropped your signal. All right. I'm interpreting her typed notes here. Breaking news. She just took a break to cough, and then the mic dropped and has stopped working. That is bad news. Okay. All right. We'll try reconnecting. You can call back, and we'll see if that works. Have you tried unplugging the microphone and plugging it back in again? I'm being asked, how would I rate the quality of this call? Well, it would be unfair to rate the quality of the call poorly, given that it might be a hardware issue on her end. But, all right, we'll give a few minutes to try and reset and bring things back. Now, if I were Laura Ingraham at this point, I understand from listening to, I got a chance to listen in a brief car ride last night, to part of the Howard Stern broadcast, and I guess they were making fun of Laura Ingraham had some sort of brief technical difficulty during one of her shows and could not for the life of her figure out what the hell to do about it. And so she just is on the air, like basically screaming at her staff and then cursing and then getting in trouble, I guess, with her network for doing so because she couldn't figure out what to do, as opposed to saying, oh, let's just talk about something because I'm a broadcaster. This she could not figure out. All right. My guess is Joan is trying to test her microphone. All right. And maybe this will work. Let's cross our fingers this one. Hey, Joan.
Hello.
Hi. Okay. There you are.
I'm going to have to do it without my headphones.
Okay. Well, we'll do our best with making it work. All right. Well, yeah. Time to get on the purchase order list there, Max. I'm sorry to hear it. Your microphone fell, eh? Or just did it actually physically drop, or just stopped working because
it just stopped working? I was just using my phone head jack and headphone thing.
Okay.
And covered up the mouth part.
Yeah.
You know, the little control thing to cough because I didn't want to cough in your ear.
Right. Well,
and it didn't come back.
Oh, well, it thought it was on vacation. So I'll see you in 2 weeks. And okay. Well,
and it's an allergy cough.
Yes. Well, okay.
No worries there.
No one can tell for sure, but yeah, no one wants to hear anybody worrying about that cough. All right. Well, I guess you're going to have to order up a new one and see what you can get. It's a good time to think about splurging on a fancy microphone, though, that you can ruin later.
No fancy. No fancy.
No. Okay. All right. We like the fancy microphones here.
So where were we?
We were just starting about, we just finished talking about Mark taking a break, and you didn't want to panic anybody. But I gather from there we are done with the preliminaries, and I guess we could start talking about other people whose breaks have come and gone, like maybe Congress could come back and find out what the maniac president is doing or something.
It would be nice if they would find out what the maniac... Remember when he was impeached?
I do. It seems so long ago. I'm not certain. I mean, he seems to remember, but I'm not certain he learned... he certainly didn't learn the Susan Collins lesson from it. But he remembers it happening, and it was very, very unfair. And now
very
he can do
unfair.
Whatever he wants.
It was a hoax.
Yeah. But so the Senate is back and attempting to fill more judicial seats. That's always
not just judicial seats.
Okay.
Remember, what's our guy's name? Ratcliffe?
Oh, yeah. Right, the one who wanted to be DNI but had lied too much?
He had lied too much, but he had lied too much for 2019. Turns out he didn't lie too much for 2020.
Okay, well, that's good. It's different, evolving standards,
Yeah.
Sure.
Even as we speak, the Intelligence Committee is having a confirmation hearing for him.
All right. Well, there are more Republicans on that committee than Democrats, so I guess he didn't lie that much.
Or it
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. I did happen to see that was on the radar. I saw Angus King commenting on the conundrum he thought was facing opponents of Ratcliffe, saying, well, if we don't approve Ratcliffe, who sucks and is a liar, then we'll be stuck with Grinnell, who's the acting DNI, who sucks and is a liar but is already there. And I didn't really see the conundrum, quite honestly. But you didn't vote for Grinnell, right? Right. So if you don't vote for Ratcliffe, then you can say, hey, I hate them both. They both suck. Yeah. And no matter which one screws up, you're right. But he's like, oh, well, maybe I should have Ratcliffe because some reason. I guess he thinks Grinnell is terrible, which he is, and he may be worse than Ratcliffe. I don't really see the difference between the two of them, but
no.
I don't know. To me, the answer is, you vote no. What's the conundrum? I mean, you don't win, but you vote no.
Right?
I don't know. Well, he's independent, so he he has to stand around pretending that there's some great intellectual exercise going on.
It's very...
I don't know.
It's frustrating. It's what it is, Kagro. It's frustrating.
Yes.
I mean, he's sitting up there saying all of the things about, well, maybe it was Russia, maybe it wasn't Russia. We don't know for sure.
Oh, Radcliffe, yeah. Well, I don't know what's bothering Angus King about it, except to say, why he can't just say everyone that the president nominates or moves into positions, acting positions, is terrible, and on purpose. They're terrible, and I hate them all, and I'm not going to vote for any of them, and case closed. But I don't know. Whatever. We'll be right back and pick this discussion up on the other side. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday, but our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. All right, welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Joan McCarter is still with us. The microphone's still working, so that's good news. All right, let's see. We've covered the preliminaries here, and so let's see. Lots of judicial craziness happening, non-judicial craziness happening, Angus King not knowing what to do about it, although I guess he just, whatever. He lands on 2 no votes, and I mean, it's not hard.
Vote no on this guy.
Right.
Who's there unwilling to say that Trump firing the intelligence community inspector general was an okay thing to do.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I don't know enough about it to answer that question.
But I would like to be the director of national intelligence.
Yes.
All right.
The other big news, apparently, that people are very much interested in out of this hearing is that Richard Burr now has a beard.
Oh.
So,
okay. Yeah. I mean, it's a thing. Yeah, I wonder whether they're going to... everybody seemed to be into that briefly. And then, of course, now that we're all supposed to wear face masks, I guess since we're not wearing N95s, the facial hair doesn't matter as much because it gets in the way of a tight fit of an N95 mask. But if we're wearing cloth masks, I guess it's okay. I was wondering if they were going to start growing facial hair to, once again, to defy the guidance of the scientists and medical officers. I will grow something that will ensure that my mask is ineffective. Yeah, well, I don't know.
Well, of course, if you're a Republican, the degree to which Republicans are denying that this is a thing that's a problem is really disturbing still.
Yeah.
Yesterday we had John Cornyn saying, just what are we supposed to do? Be in a fetal position, all curled up? We're essential workers. We have to be there.
Okay.
As if you could out-macho a virus.
Yes, well, viruses are very concerned about that. I don't know. I'm not really sure why they don't think it's, a good idea to take precautions. But maybe they want to be sick. I understand they're trying to look like tough guys and everything, but I'm not certain why they think wearing a mask is not. I guess they're still stuck in the old thinking. I think this is just what's happening. Like with Trump, well, number of reasons, not the least of which it would smear his makeup, I guess. But I think that they're stuck in the old thinking of, a mask is for someone who's afraid of catching the virus, as opposed to an act of politeness for other people. No one, I don't think there's any Republican senators who say, we should be coughing and sneezing on people like God intended, because, they might say the founders intended. It's in the Constitution. I'm supposed to sneeze on you. There's nothing tough about sneezing on people, I don't think, unless there's some.
It's the I'm too tough to get sick thing. Right. I think it's but because they're not concerned about other people that they might be infecting.
That can't be it. So I guess maybe that's.
I look at Rand Paul.
Yeah.
Who had suspected he had it, had gotten the test.
Right.
Before he got the test results back, was hanging around in the gym.
Right.
Being all pally with his friends.
Yeah.
While he thought he had it. Turns out he did.
Yeah, I wonder whether maybe he thought I'm too tough to actually have it, but who knows? He certainly knew it was a possibility. It's
fascinating to me, the Republican attitude toward life.
Yeah.
What emerges from the womb.
I guess. Oh, I just saw a picture of Mitch McConnell with a mask on, which is very nice to see, because he's an ugly person, and I'm glad he's covering his face.
It really is. It's hard to overstate just how I'm running out of words for Mitch McConnell.
Mm-hmm.
The whole reason they are there this week is for these nominees, and really for Walker, who you talked about already.
Yeah.
More than anybody else. He's not doing anything legislatively on the crisis that we're in right now.
No, well, what would he do about that?
Other than drawing red lines in the sand that, Nancy Pelosi cannot cross. We will not give any money to cities and states. And we must have liability protection for all of the companies we're dragging employees back to, where they're going to get sick because their employers won't provide them adequate protection.
Yeah.
They can't sue. Their survivors can't sue.
Yeah, right. Well, okay, no help coming there. I thought I saw, Jim Jordan was on TV the other day, and interestingly, challenging this somehow. Like, why won't Nancy Pelosi? What is she afraid of? Why won't she bring the House back? Which actually is a good question, except a bad person has asked it in bad faith. But that is another sort of mystery we haven't really worked out yet, except that I guess maybe the House is a very large body, and bringing 400 and something people together is not something you should do lightly in the middle of a pandemic.
It is not something, and the attending physician has recommended that they not.
Okay.
Not that Mitch McConnell's going to pay any attention to that, but she's got a very different caucus than the Republicans and than the Senate. Younger, a lot more people with young families who don't have childcare, don't have kids in school,
right? Don't
have a way to handle their responsibilities at home if they have to leave.
Yeah.
Some of whom have been ill. I think most are out of it. We haven't seen any new news of infections among House members. But, she's got a membership that is much more concerned about this, as is the general public. There's a partisan divide in who's taking this seriously and who is not.
That's true. Although,
and that's
as you
reflected in the House of Representatives.
Yeah.
The Republicans came up with all of these plans of how they can come back safely. They just rework offices. They just, bring in the architect of the Capitol and figure out how to put up some plexiglass barriers or something in offices, and everybody can work again. Suggesting that they have never been in the staff part of their own offices.
That could be. I'm not sure. Yeah, right. You'd be suspending plexiglass from wire from an overhead vent. There's not much.
There's limited space.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it in congressional offices, and you have as many as 8 people in a staff room.
Yeah. Who
have maybe 4 feet square for their desk.
Right. Desks head to head, just to, save on floor space. I guess you could put a piece of plexiglass between those two, but yeah. I mean, you'd have a harder time making it to the door if you're putting up plexiglass shields effectively around people's workspaces, because they're crammed in every possible corner.
And closet. Yeah. I mean, it is just, there's not the physical space to be able to physically separate people in Capitol Hill offices. That's true. They can't bring back all staff. Most staff's going to have to telework.
Yeah. Well, it's doable.
It's just, there are a lot of complications. They don't have enough tests.
Yes, that was another thing.
Because nobody has enough tests.
They couldn't
the
even
White House says, well, you can have
100.
our tests. And Pelosi and McConnell, of course, say, well, no, we're not going to take tests. If the American people aren't being tested, then we're not going to be tested. Although, being essential workers, perhaps they should be. What it all boils down to is that weeks and weeks and weeks ago, House leadership should have figured out some system of being able to do business remotely.
Yeah. I have yet to hear an explanation why they can't.
A lot of pushback from Pelosi and Clyburn and Hoyer on doing so. The sort of institutionalism and some of that same sort of macho idea, well, we're essential, we have to be there. We're not going to bow down to a virus.
Yeah, I guess, but then be there. I haven't seen that happen either. I'm a little confused by it, and I spent some time trying to figure it out. There's been a lot of pushback from Pelosi and others, but not a lot of explanation of what's behind the pushback. Here's the push. Okay, but why are you saying that? Well, something constitutional. All right, what? It's a thing. I mean, give us the CRS report. Well, I'll read it.
I know that she's had some concern about Republicans using anything that they might pass by remote voting or proxy voting or anything else. Republicans coming back and saying that isn't constitutional, challenging the very laws that they try to pass.
Right. I mean, that's a big concern. Just like I said, let me have the CRS report that says that's a possibility, and then we'll report it, and then people say, I understand now.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be a helpful thing.
There's people capable of explaining it to people. Not everybody's going to get it. Not everybody's going to care. Not everybody's going to buy it. But what is it? All they've done is say, well, there's some constitutional issues.
Yeah. And if Republicans are going to do that, then call them out.
Yeah,
Say, the Republicans are making us less safe.
Yeah.
They're trying to bring us here and get us all infected. Use it.
Sure. I wouldn't trust, for instance, trying to get them on the record as promising not to make such a challenge, because they'll just simply abandon that promise. But it might be worth getting it on the record and saying, all right, look, if there's nothing else we can do, we'll have to try things this way. The Republicans have, been consulted about how to come back and have agreed to X, Y, and Z measures. And, but keep an eye out, because they're probably lying and will sue later because they don't like the outcome of the vote. And sure enough, when they do it, then you say, I told you there was really no dealing with these guys.
I can certainly understand why a lot of the members are not, particularly Democratic members, are worried about coming back.
Sure.
I mean, we saw the interim COVID response bill, the phase 3.5 or whatever it was, the extra money for small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
We saw Republicans hanging out on the floor together. They were supposed to be going in small groups, voting and leaving.
Yeah.
And, there were a bunch of Republicans hanging out, talking to each other, not 6 feet apart, not wearing their masks.
Mm-hmm.
These are people not taking it seriously. And I don't blame their colleagues on the other side of the aisle for being concerned about that.
Yeah. Right. Well.
But I got to figure something out, because we're kind of in a crisis still, and there's still a lot of work to be done. And the House is supposed to be taking the lead on the next phase. which we should have had 2 weeks ago. We don't have a date ahead for when that's going to drop. We don't know for sure what's going to be in it other than state and local aid. Democrats insist. Probably not Trump's payroll tax cut. As even Republicans say, there's no point in having a payroll tax cut when people don't have payroll.
Right. Also problematic. Sure.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. they're going to need to generate this thing and they'll have a vote. And they've worked out votes, like you said, just by letting people in a few at a time. It's too bad. I guess they could. They're
bringing 435 people to D.C., exposing them to airports, putting them in airplanes, all of the things that it takes to get them there. And, are they there? Do they then pick up and leave and go home? At the very least, they need to get an agreement on proxy voting.
Yeah, I can't really understand what the difficulty is there. I'd love to have the explanation because they've done they had to get rid of proxy voting when they wanted to reform it, and I could understand the reluctance to turn around and go the other direction, but it can be temporary or a standing order for the current Congress, perhaps, but not really sure why they are afraid of that one. But yeah, it's a real risk and everything. It's good that they're taking it seriously, unlike, I guess, say, the 1,000 newest Army officers that were going to graduate from West Point in the next month or so, and we're going to send them into the military infected. I guess the president has decided that he's going to speak to them, and he wants them all in ranks back in West Point from wherever they are. They, too, are going to have to fly back and forth and maybe leave their families behind, maybe bring the families with them to the center of the outbreak in New York. And but it's all it's all the general's fault, too.
Well, I thought that they had decided that families wouldn't be there.
I thought that they decided that, too, but then they decided that you weren't allowed to have a press conference inside the Lincoln Memorial, too, until they didn't.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think Trump wants the families. I don't know whether the families want to do it, but I'm sure they would love to see it. And a lot of people,
the families that don't want their kids to have to do this.
But a lot of families will, of course, say, "Well, I don't know. The president of the United States says it's safe, so I guess
commander in chief,
right?
Because they, are going to be military families largely, probably. Now. So the way West Point works.
Yeah. So they may all, or at least all show up for that thing. But he's been very weird about that. I did read the other day that he, in addition to insisting that it happened, also insists this wasn't my idea. I didn't even want to do it. The generals begged me. They came to me, tears streaming down their eyes. Sir, please.
He said that it was the generals that were making this happen?
Yes. He said, I didn't even want to do it, but the generals asked me, and it's a great honor, so I have to. So, that's typically Trump, just like...
I don't understand why we haven't had a military coup yet. I mean, I'm not asking for one. I don't think it's a good idea. I'm not really sure. I mean, he's really treated the military with some serious disdain in all of this. They're up to over 1,000 infections among the crew of the Theodore Roosevelt, and still haven't, I don't think, reinstated their captain. And no word of apology, certainly from the commander-in-chief, saying this was handled poorly. But nothing about that. There's also like 3 other carrier groups that are infected, apparently. Not sure what we're going to do about any of those things. Bring me the new officer corps to infect them. Blame it on the generals. I think what we're going to do about it is not hear about it anymore.
Yeah.
The carriers, anyway. I'm pretty sure I saw that.
Yes, I think you're right.
There's a new order that they don't report cases anymore.
Right.
They'll take care of it.
Right. Well, if it's going to go away by magic, the magic is not the warm weather. The magic is press moratoriums. You're not allowed to report it or else you're court-martialed. Okay, well, that'll probably do it. I did see. Yeah, that's the last report we'll hear from the Roosevelt. Now that a quarter of the crew is infected. Well, I don't know. I don't know what it's going to take, but it's past time. I can see that. I mean, really, honestly, you can't say you would welcome a coup of any kind. And a military coup would be the scary kind. And,
it would be the scary kind.
Who knows what kind of results you get out of that. You're not going to get the legal sort either. They're not going to 25th Amendment him, and they can't find the votes for impeachment. This is some problem with it's a basic design problem. We have a real user interface issue here.
Well, I don't think that the Founding Fathers really envisioned a Trump.
No, there's no way. I mean, even...
they envisioned an autocrat.
Yeah.
But not one that was insane.
Yeah. Well, I think they envisioned a devious, crafty, clever autocrat.
Yeah.
Not a bouncing off the walls idiot autocrat. I might do this. I might not do this. I'm going to undo it. Just a complete wacko and a liar. And we're finding that it's not just the fathers, the Founding Fathers, who... I guess we are still stuck with just fathers on that, aren't we? Anyway, not just them that missed it on this. We're seeing a lot of people who prepared to leave the incoming administration with something in the way of a plan for a pandemic, who, in addition to seeing their plans thrown out, are saying the one thing we didn't plan for was a president who would have no active interest in mitigating the pandemic. We really all thought that the next president would be like, I should do something about this. It won't magically go away. I have to take an action. And nobody...
It's pretty unimaginable when you think about it, that somebody could become president who doesn't care if millions of his people die in a pandemic.
Yeah. I mean, that's tough. We've encountered it before in a different way, like, a president who isn't going to be interested in, obeying the law, or a law that says the president can't do something, but doesn't say what happens if the president does do it. Therefore, the law is insufficient. We've run into that with, as early as, well, certainly with George W. Bush, and probably Nixon and maybe earlier, where we didn't really plan for anything beyond, well, the president would be ashamed to do such a thing. But this is a totally different level of, not only is he not ashamed, but I mean, what if the president wants people to die? Or what if the president is chiefly loyal to a different country? Or what if he's just dumb and doesn't like doing anything besides watching television?
And being king.
Yeah, right. And flying around to places. There's nobody, they would have said, you're wasting our time at the planning table if you said, well, okay, first step we have to do is make sure the president gets out of his pajamas and comes to the office. That should be number one. Come on, let's get to the substance of things. No, take my word for it. I'm a time traveler from the future. You're really going to need this one, believe it or not. How could he be? Why would he run for president? Why go through the problems of that the presidency brings if he's not going to want to? I don't know. I'm just telling you, the guy isn't going to come to the office.
It's going to happen.
He's going to install a Diet Coke button in the residence, and he's never going to leave, and he's going to want a gorilla channel. So maybe what you're going to want
to do is rethink that whole electoral college business.
Yeah, that's another thing. And by the way, we're going to get those people together again in the age of pandemic? I don't think so. Can they vote remotely? They do it in their states, but I mean, I think they all have to get together for that. Should we have that fixed?
They do. We have an extremely uncertain future, Kagro.
Yeah, that's bad. Well, or maybe
it is bad, and that there seems to be paralysis at so many levels on what happens next is disturbing. From Tom Perez at the DNC, who said a couple of days ago,
"Yes,
sure, we'll have a convention." No.
Sure. No. All right. Well,
We can't have a convention, and you really need to be planning now how you're going to have a not convention.
Yes. And I assume somebody's working on that, and so that somebody slapped their forehead when they saw Perez say, "Oh yeah."
We certainly hope so, but when you have leadership saying, "Oh no, we're not going to need it," do you keep planning? I mean, this is what's happening in the White House all of the time.
Yeah, right. True. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I assume they do, but
we don't know what's going to happen in the fall. We don't know what's going to happen with the election. We don't know what's going to happen in January when we're supposed to be inaugurating the next president. And it would be very helpful if right now we knew we had, say, a Speaker Pelosi who was planning for how the House is going to respond to all of this.
Yes.
That has an action plan for moving forward, and that even has a bill ready to go on the next round of assistance to all of the people out here who don't have jobs, who are afraid of losing their houses, who don't have enough to eat. It's kind of a crisis right now, and it's really hard to get the sense from our leadership that they get just how dire things are.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, that's maybe we can drive that home.
At the moment, we have a large majority of people who say, yes, we need to stay locked down. No, I don't want to go to a restaurant. No, I don't want to go buy clothes. I really just want to stay in my house and be safe and know that the people around me are doing the same thing.
Yeah.
What we see on television is all of these people clamoring to go out, clamoring to get back to normal.
Well, right. And as it turns out, the polling tells us it's a tiny minority, but we already have experienced Tea Party with television loves a tiny minority for some reason, unless it's our minority or our majority for that matter, in which case they ignore that as well.
It's hard to get great press coverage for your protest of sitting in your living room on your couch.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I'll give it to them for
want to be.
Yeah, I'll give it to the protesters who did the car thing. That was a good idea, and they
Except
actually,
that, of course, ambulances and fire trucks couldn't get through.
Well, no, it wasn't a good idea for maintaining social order. It was a good idea for maintaining social distancing, but one of the problems is that they blocked the hospital access. But I mean, there's got to be maybe that's it. Although we've had no luck getting them. We put 1 million people in the streets, and again, liberals, they do this stuff. It's only interesting that conservatives who would otherwise love to be productive at work are out there protesting. And I don't know what's bothering, why none of these people aren't just working. I guess if they figure they can defy all the orders to assemble outside of the State House, why don't they just ignore the orders and go back to work instead? But the answer, I think, is...
Yeah, because I don't think it's really about their not being able to be back at work.
Yeah, they want other people to work for them.
And, we're only seeing it happening in Democratic-led states.
Yes.
And like in Ohio, where the protesters weren't protesting Mike DeWine.
No.
They were protesting the woman who is the public health official in the state.
That's the way they found their way to that. And that was a lot harder to find her house than to find where the governor lives, I promise.
Yeah.
So
typical. It's really not about how much they want to go back to work.
No, apparently not.
No.
And we also have some weird thing. You know what I would like to find out is I would like to know either who did this or who's the lobbyist for the tattoo people. How did they manage this? That states are saying, yes, tattoos have got to open back up. How did that happen? And I don't know whether
that one. I mean, in the South, you can understand when they're saying nail salons, barbershops, hair salons.
Sure.
They're thinking that's going to mostly be African Americans, and we would just as soon extend them.
I guess that's possibly true.
Tattoo parlors? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a tougher call, and quite honestly, I don't know. Maybe I have an outdated. I know I have an outdated idea of tattoos and tattoo places, but my guess is that that's the place where people are, let's say, less likely to be concerned about, public health issues.
Hygiene?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe they're very clean. They don't want to get their tattoos infected. I misunderstand them. But, yeah, I don't know how they convinced anybody that...
We just lost the tattoo audience.
I guess so. I'm sorry. But I'm sure most people could wait. And haircuts, I know, is weighing on people's minds, sort of in a literal sense. But I don't know anybody who said, you know what I don't have is more flames or skulls. I need to get those drawn on me quickly because no one is looking at me because I'm at home. I don't know. But whoever did that one is a lobbying genius, and we should hire that guy. All right.
Hire them for everything. All right.
Thanks very much for you too. Thank you. You do the same. Thanks for struggling through your microphone issues and making your way back here. We'll check in with you next Tuesday. Stay healthy.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. We'll take this short break and tell you what's coming up next on Netroots Radio.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
All right, great stuff as always coming up with Justice Putnam on the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy next. Looks like an interesting one coming up here right up at the top of things. Chairwoman Carolyn Maloney of the House Oversight Committee and U.S. Representative Jackie Speer criticizing Jaguar Health Incorporated. Want to know why? Has to do with price gouging. Check it out next.